Hello everybody, in the video today I'm talking about work environment, workplace conditions, now and then. And when I say then, I'm going to start talking about the 1980s because that's when I started in the workforce. So the 1980s workplace environment and the 2020s workplace environment. I'm just going to do a little bit of a comparison and contrast. My name is Dawn Dickinson. The channel is Reflections and Insights for Life Over 55. Alright, so some of you probably can relate to some of the stories I'm about to tell you. A lot of the things that we were looking for in the 1980s and 1990s are probably very similar to what they are today. We wanted work-life balance, decent salary and benefits, a decent career path, opportunity to learn new skills, new skill sets, and then exposure to technology. So I actually have some pictures, if I can find them, I'm going to put up of the old computer systems that we used back then, and it's laughable compared to today. But those are some of the basic things that we wanted back in the 1980s, and we still want them today. Now, the funny, or probably the first observation is, remember what it was like to go job hunting back in the late 1970s, early 1980s. It was so different. First of all, when I was in high school, what you would have to do for a high school job, say at the McDonald's or at the grocery store, you would go into the store and say, can I have a job application? You might ask for the manager and they would give you a job application and you would fill it out, pen and paper, while you were there and turn it in. And sometimes you would get an ad hoc interview right on the spot. Although, when I was looking in high school, jobs were so scarce for these entry-level or these unskilled type of jobs that you would be walking up to the McDonald's and there would be a sign on the door that said no help needed. And that was quite a commonplace in the 70s and early 1980s, and now it's completely the opposite. Companies are begging. I see places here that are at a hotel or at a restaurant. Sometimes you'll see a sign-on bonus for, entry-level or unskilled jobs. So that is funny. The other thing is, once I got to the point where I graduated college and was looking for my first job, you would have to get the classified ads out and you would look through help wanted section, and you found something, you would have to get out the old typewriter and you would have to type your cover letter and get an envelope and type that out, and then you would have to get your resume. Now, to get a resume back in the early 1980s was also difficult because you would have to first have it all written out, and then you would have to go to some place like Kinko's or something that was a print shop, and you would have to get it typeset and printed, and you get it printed on this very nice paper. I remember right out of college going and spending about $50 to get it typeset and printed. And now when you're thinking, oh, $50 is really not much for career investment, but think back to like 1985, 1986, minimum wage was $3.35 an hour. So at my part-time job at the mall, for instance, it took a long time for me to save up $50 to get my resumes typeset and printed, and then go through all that to work to start applying for jobs when I was getting near college graduation. Another major difference between now and then is my very first job out of college. I was in a very nice office setting and we were all professionally dressed. So you don't see as many companies requiring professional dress, but we would have to wear skirts or dresses, pantyhose, high heels to work every day. And actually, this is something else that you would never see today, but we actually had a dress code in the company that I worked for that women had to wear a dress or a skirt because the legs were the best part of a woman's body and it was a sin to cover them up. That was the actual reason behind the dress code. So we weren't allowed to wear a very nice pantsuit or anything. We had to wear some type of a dress, skirt, and you don't see that vocalized in any company today. Wow, can you imagine that? So anyhow, we are also in an office where you were allowed to smoke anywhere in the building. You would go to work in the morning in your beautiful, professional suit and skirt and a slip, and you would come home reeking of cigarette smoke. Your pantyhose would stink of cigarette. Your slip, you'd have to wash everything every night because you reeked, your hair, cigarette smoke, because everybody freely in the office walking around with a cigarette in their hand, and that certainly doesn't happen today. So when it came to overtime, that would always come up in the interview. What do you think about overtime? And they were kind of feeling you out, and you better not say, I try to avoid overtime at all costs. And remember, these are salaried jobs, right? So you're not going to get paid for overtime. Overtime was basically free. So you would say something like, I would always say, well, I don't like to work a lot of overtime, but I know sometimes when there's a demanding project, I'm willing to do it to get the deliverables finished on time. So I would say that was my standard answer. But if you would say, no, I don't work overtime, or no, I don't work for free, you probably wouldn't get passed over. And even though companies would spout off that in their culture they wanted an important work-life balance was one of their core values, when it came down to it, they really wanted you to work a lot of overtime for free. So now I'm going to move over a little bit when you talk about the harassment aspect. Now, none of us women like to be harassed in the 70s and 80s, but I certainly think it was way more prevalent than it is now. And the first example, of course, is the dress code. The company that I worked at, you had to wear a dress or a skirt because the women's legs are the best part of their bodies and it's a sin to cover it up. That actually came out of the mouth of the CEO from the company that I worked for. So imagine that flying today. There was another case, the women were constantly being harassed. There was one gal that I was friends with who was a little bit flat on top, and one day she had gone to Iowa to see her family, and she came back and the boss kept on harassing her. Where are they? Where'd you leave them? And she's like, what are you talking about? You like, your boobs. You left your boobs in Iowa. And I'm like, oh, and she was, of course, very upset over this. And he thought it was funny. Ah, ha, ha, ha. You left your boobs in Iowa. You know, like maybe said this 24 times the first week she was back from her vacation. You know, and that gets pretty old after a while. Actually, it gets old after one time. But this is the common stuff that we would see. Hey, if somebody was in a bad mood, you know, what's the matter with you? You just need a hot beef injection. Imagine your boss telling you need a hot beef injection because you're in a bad mood. Well, maybe because you looked at me like that, or because you're a jerk, you might be in a bad mood, but you know, no, you need a hot beef injection. So that kind of stuff happened quite frequently in the 70s and 80s, or at least the company I worked with. Maybe I was at a very strange company, but I think there were other companies that this weird climate was happening to. All right, so now let's move on to my first really good corporate job that I got after I got my MBA in the 1990s. So now we've moved on to the 1990s and I'm working for Intel Corporation. And I'm like, this is it. I've hit the big time. And very early after I started working at Intel, I used to have these quarterly meetings with all of the employees that they called a business update meeting. And one of the very first, actually the very first business update meeting I go to, we had a CIO who was a female. I remember her name. And she was up there giving this speech, and she made a joke that she knew that the most commonly prescribed drug for Intel employees was Prozac. Now, this is after Prozac was not, was still on patent, so it was a relatively new drug. And she was laughing, that's so funny. You're so stressed out, you need Prozac to do your job. And I'm like mortified, you know. This is my new career, and I need to get Prozac. But for your CIO at a department update meeting to joke that the most commonly prescribed drug is Prozac is pretty unsettling, especially because there were HIPAA laws. They were not as extreme as they were today, but I'm also thinking, like, how does she know that? Does she have access to all our prescription information? That also unsettled me too. Probably she didn't know that. It was just a joke, but as a brand new employee, it really freaked me out for the twofold. The one that I'm going to need Prozac in order to do my job here, and the second is that my employer has access to my prescription drug information. Another thing that they did at Intel, this actually did happen to me once, is you'd have a small department meeting, and if your manager got mad, he would just yell at you in front of the rest of the staff at the conference room. So imagine being at a small staff meeting. This happened to me once where the manager was mad at me and he started screaming, "Why didn't you tell me this before the meeting?" Well, I hadn't seen him before the meeting, so I thought it wasn't urgent enough. I had to pull him away, and there was an issue that came out during the meeting that I didn't warn him about. "Why didn't you tell me this during the meeting? You need to hunt me down." And then he said, "I am not a happy camper," and he slammed his papers on the desk and stormed out and slammed the door behind him. This is all directed at me in front of my colleagues. Like, would this happen today? I don't think so. It was pretty unprofessional. Of course, another reason I had to go and cry in the bathroom after that. And then the last thing that Intel did, I don't think they're doing this very much anymore, but they would do at review time. They actually did this twice a year at review time. They always would promote the team atmosphere and how important it was for us to all work as a team. But yet at review time, they had this system called ranking and rating. And so you would take all the people in a department departments, say 30 department managers would get together and they would rank them. Oh, Dawn, she's crappy. We're going to put her midway at 15. And Joe over here, he's great. So we're going to put him at number 1. And Bill's going to be number 2. And then you're going to get compensated where you fall in the rank. So how is that cohesive to a team environment and making people work well together? I don't know. And we're narking on each other and we're having to look for things to write people up, either good or bad. But, we're all looking out for ourselves. I don't want to rank at number 4. I want to rank at number 1. So this, again, was a very difficult culture that I saw in the 1990s. And I know it's not going on at Intel today, but perhaps other companies are adopting it. I've also heard that Intel does not scream at employees anymore in front of other employees. Again, I don't work there. I haven't worked there since 2001. And of course, the Prozac joke, that was pretty unsettling. So those are the types of differences that I have noticed. Now today, I actually work for myself. I don't think I could work for anybody else now that I'm, approaching 60. I am a real estate agent, so I do work for a broker, but I'm actually a contract employee. So I am self-employed, but I do associate with Berkshire Hathaway for work, but yet I am an independent contractor. I get all my leads on my own, I do all my deals on my own, and I go to Berkshire to administer the broker type information and to help me when I'm in a bind. So again, after decades of working in the corporate world, I can't do it anymore. I know things have changed. If you have any interesting work stories, I'd love it if you would leave it in the comments below. Again, my name is Dawn Dickinson and the channel is Reflections and Insights for Life Over 55. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you do, please give me a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want, because I post videos like this every single week, and I hope to see you back here again next week.